Welcome back to New Realities. I'm Alan Steinfeld, and I'm very happy today to have a special guest, Carey Benenson Taussig, who's an osteopath from Europe. But my friend Barbara Slane, who's joining me today, knows more about Carey. And Barbara, please introduce today's guest.
Hi, guys, and pardon any kind of planes. I'm right near the Barclays Center. But so I have a center in Connecticut, the Life Balance. Now it's in New York, Life Balance. And I have been privileged to meet people that are healers. And I've been doing this for a while, and I've really kind of fine-tuned it. They call Carey the magician in Florence. Carey is a Swiss-trained osteopath. And along with her training and her spiritual orientation, which is very solid and clear, she's a bioresonance practitioner. So it's the combination of the science and the energy work and a spiritual practice. And everyone who has worked with Carey, pretty much everyone, and myself, I've had many sessions, have had remarkable results because it's always the combination of the mind, body, and soul. We cannot separate it. If there is a situation in one, you could almost be guaranteed there's something going on in the other area. And Carey always sees that holistic picture. She's amazing, and we're very fortunate to have her. I am in my life and all of my community. And Carey does incredible distance healing, and I think we're being led into that. We're all energy beings, and this is something that could be done and is done. So I'm so excited to be here with Alan and Carey, so you can experience her work. Welcome, Carey.
Yes, welcome. Thanks for being here, Carey. Do you want to just fill in that background? Because, you know, as an osteopath, you don't usually deal with a spiritual component, but you've somehow managed to integrate all of it. So how did you develop your approach, and how do you work with people, really? So
thank you so much. Thank you, Barbara, for the introduction. Thank you so much, Alan, for having me. So I, American, trained in Switzerland and in Canada, trained in the traditional osteopathic practice, which is the manual therapeutic practice, where we use our hands like mechanics work on the on a car. We use our hands to apply manual therapeutic techniques, and we need to know the body like an auto mechanic knows its car. So we work on aligning a person basically teeth to toe, organs, nerves, vessels, fascia, all of the musculoskeletal body is our responsibility to work with, so that the body can do what it innately knows what to do. From my training, we learn to align the musculoskeletal body, but we also learn to work with the fluidic body and the electromagnetic body. And over the years, where patients would fly in to see me in studio, over time, they ask, well, how can I continue to work with you? I trust you. I want to continue this work, but I'm in Germany, or I'm in New York, or I'm in different places. And I had a very powerful experience in 2009 where someone was not responding to care and was having an epileptic episode. And the mother came to me and asked me to help. This person was in Colorado. Long story short, I worked long distance, which I had been doing here and there with colleagues and had actually been doing in different ways my whole life. Even when I was a child, there are testimonies of me working on people, putting my hands on people, seeing things, etc. And in 2009, I had this very powerful experience where the patient responded from long distance work. And from that point on, I realized that was a very important part of my practice. So I do see patients in studio. I teach internationally what's called visceral manipulation, where we work to align the organs, et cetera, so that they'll function better. I come from a biodynamic approach, which is more of an energetic approach, if you will. But the important part is that with the quarantine, I have exclusively been working long distance. And it has been very transformative for me because I feel like I've really come to And with that, I'm with these strange hours and change of our cellular and circadian rhythm. I've been up till some hours of the night, just absorbing the information, studying all sorts of things, also in the spiritual realm. And the work has just, I feel like I'm on a train, I'm the passenger. And it's been a really important journey, and it's really growing. And I mean, I'm completely full. It's full time. It's full time and full on. So.
Let me just ask you about working long distance. As far as the body's here, physical in form, when you're sending your energy, I'm not sure how you work long distance. Are you working physically on their body or energetically on their body? And is that then also present everywhere, our energetic bodies? You know what I mean?
Yes, I know what you mean. That's a very good question. Essentially, in clinic, if I'm in studio with someone, I'm working on the musculoskeletal body with my hands. But oftentimes, if there's a strain, for example, the hip is low or high, but there's some energetic imprint because the fall when they were 8 years old, they felt that it was their fault or there was something going on in their life. This energetic entrapment happened and it got caught in the tissue. We can adjust a bone many times, but perhaps the adjustment won't hold because the actual primary strain is energetic. And I know you understand this with your work. So we can adjust all we want, but if we don't hold or not hold the iliac, the hip bone, and allow the tissue to release its story, then oftentimes the chronic, it won't change. The chronic people, oh, I always have to go. My leg is long on one side. I always have to get it adjusted again and again and again. It might be shame in your hip because you felt it was your fault when you fell down and someone else got hurt and broke their arm, for example. And so the other way around, so we're working on the electromagnetic body as well as the musculoskeletal body. And then the fluidic body we look at as, or I look at as the mediator between, because we're so fluidic, anywhere from 65% to 85% fluid, blood, plasma, cerebral spinal fluid, lymphatic fluid. So we look at it as the fluidic body, which is considered the emotional body, is the mediator between the two bodies, between the electromagnetic and musculoskeletal body. At the same sense, when I'm working from long distance, I will hold the person electromagnetically. In other words, I'm closing my eyes, I'm in a deep meditative state, and I see them. And through the electromagnetic body, I might actually adjust a collarbone, or the diaphragm might ask me to bring it down so that their hiatal hernia might resolve. As we know, the stomach sits right underneath the diaphragm and can go high. So a lot of these energetic long distance healing sessions are very structural, but I'm accessing it through the electromagnetic field, electromagnetic body. And as we know, energy is constant. That's scientifically proven. So we know that energy is constant. We're all connected that way. So a lot of the sessions are very, very structural. In fact, I work with a lot of very chronic cases and very difficult cases that respond well to this type of care.
Well, Barbara also said you talk a lot about the lymphatic system. And is that the carrier fluids you're talking about? And
yes, the lymphatic system is really the core. It's number one in the lymphatic, in the fluidic body. We can think about the cardiorespiratory system, the circulatory system, the blood. But truthfully, we're discovering that the lymphatic system is number one. It's number one. And that disease, even looking back at the old osteopathic texts, where Dr. Andrew Taylor Still spoke about, the founding father of osteopathy, spoke about how the lymphatic system is, if there is congestion, if there's blockage specifically in that system, the nerves are not fed, the vessels are not able to flush properly, and then disease becomes a case of opportunistic, basically disease. He didn't even believe in disease. He believed that disease, specifically looking at lung fever, if we were to talk about COVID, is simply opportunistic to a stagnant lymphatic system. And the lymphatic system is the system that carries our immune cells to site.
So do you believe in body? I have my body brush here. I'll show you. I brush with my body brush every day. This is my little body brush here.
Yes.
And is that one of the best things for your lymphatic? You just kind of...
Yes, it's fantastic. I mean, if we can move our own lymphatic system every day, and if we put intention that system is also linked to our emotions. I
Mm,
mean, doing that every day is extremely healthy because what you're doing is you're flushing the tissues. You're flushing the tissues. At the level of the capillaries, we have our lymphatic system as well. We
right.
have the arteries, the capillaries, arterioles, and the venules, and we have the lymphatic system in between. And that is where all the exchange happens. So that
Well, Barbara, why don't you talk about some of the experiences you had with Carey?
Well,
Okay.
sure, sure. I mean, I am, very open to the work with Carey. We've had a relationship for a while. I think what I've seen, and I know a lot of people are on the call that have worked with her, it's sometimes easier to view it on someone else, but there's just a knowing of what's going on. And again, the most important thing is that it's looking at a broader picture of who you are as an energetic being that happens to have landed in this body. So it Carey always reflects on all those areas. So gee, Carey, should we give a recent example? Well, there's so
Yeah.
many. I mean, I'll give a funny one. I mean, I was a little constipated, and I got a text from Carey one day saying, I feel like you're pushing hard against something. It was actually at that moment. So, I mean, talk about someone being intuitive, but going on a deeper level, there's all sorts of resistances that affect, it starts in the etheric and it kind of ends in the body. And if you can catch it before it happens to land in the body, that's so much easier because the body's so much more dense. Would you say, Carey, it's easier to work with something when it's kind of in the energetic before it comes into the body, or what's your experience with that?
I would agree with that. I would absolutely agree with that. In fact, you know, oftentimes in the body, if it's spinning and it's chronic, it's really not so much about the adjustment or seeing. For example, I'll give one example. I saw a patient yesterday. She's been dealing with herpetic outbreaks continuously around the tailbone. There's been
What's
no
herpetic outbreaks? What does that mean, herpetic outbreaks?
herpetic, so herpes zoster,
Oh,
What?
herpes.
Oh,
Okay.
oh, I see.
So at the tailbone, there's been all this care around it. And just seeing her with my eyes closed, there was all sorts of information going on around the sternum. And oftentimes, this is where the osteopathic intuitive comes in, is oftentimes whatever's going on with the with the sacrum, which is at the triangular bone at the base of the spine and tailbone, we'll look at it possibly if they've not have been responding to care. It's because there's something coming from the sternum because those two bones form together embryologically.
Oh.
So in her case, to get her better, and she felt instantly a change in the irritation and the itching that was going on. I closed my eyes, and yes, I saw this relationship, to say the interrelationship osteopathically, but all of a sudden I saw this incredible vision of this cloak, her majestic, the queen, and the velvet cloak was gathered with big jewels that the gathering of the velvet looked like ribs. It was like the thoracic cage here. And she looked like, I saw a crest like they have in Italy on the palazzos, on the buildings, like a crest of this beautiful hawk or eagle, some regal bird, blah, 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 spoke and saw this incredible vision, heard that this was 12 generations ago, connected with her afterwards. Not only had she had complete relief immediate in the irritation around the rash, and had some sort of insight. There was all sorts of things going on with the thymus gland, which is an immune gland, hyperreactive underneath the sternum. And after seeing her, just seeing this incredible, majestic vision, I spoke with her. Her family's from Italy. We were talking about the connections of her family and what that crest meant in her family. I mean, it was remarkable. And yet that is what the system needed to show for her to have resolve in a herpes outbreak near the tailbone. And I'm just amazed because my patients become my teachers and how we can see these things. So yes, it is. It's like where the healing happens is seeing the story in the field versus focusing so much on these points in the body, and giving the system a chance to take me through a journey. And sometimes in the journey, the system says, hey, I need you to rotate my sacrum. But in this case, the system said, I just need to show you this story. And then the physical changes. And that's the student for life, where I just continue to ride this train of experience and apply sort of these oh, that makes sense, because the sternum and the, I have this osteopathic background where I can make sense and do structurally when the body asks me to do.
But that brings up a whole bunch of other questions in a way, and possibilities, as that the lineage, the genetics, the
Exactly.
Spiritual and emotional genetics that are encoded, and it's almost infinite, the levels of things we're holding in our body. Is it possible to free us from everything, or is that karmically why we incarnated, to work through that?
That's a really good, you're asking such great questions. I personally believe that we carry our story through the DNA. I don't know about being born into another lineage or another being. That for me, for my spiritual belief, doesn't quite fit, but I'm malleable in the sense that I'm always asking these questions. When I'm experiencing these things, I can say that some of the times where I feel like, yes, someone has given me feedback that for the first time in their life, they haven't had pain in a certain place. And it's held. And that's what's remarkable, is that the testimonials stand. They don't have to keep doing it to hold it. And when those happen, I would say that it's because something huge has been seen. And I feel like I'm a witness to the system reconnecting to its original grid. And at that point, spiritually, this is the come to. And I've done this with some people even watching, is that at that point, I feel it is my job to be the ultimate neutral. And I literally lift them up in prayer space and allow them to get big and to source their own intelligence to connect with God or creator or source or light, or however we get there. It's like I bow to a process and I say, okay, now it's my job to hold this person as high as I can so that they can connect to their authentic self.
Wow,
I think
that's
that's part of the beauty
beautiful.
of Carey, is to have that humility, to have the ego out of the way, I think, and like any true energy healing, allows for a greater connection to the possibilities of coming back to that original blueprint.
Well, that's what I was going to say at the beginning of the show, because I study Chinese medicine, and the Taoists say that the lowest level of medicine is making somebody better. The next level is keeping them well, but the highest form of medicine is connecting people to their destiny. And when you're connected to your destiny, your body's engaged with vitality. So I think that's what you're doing in a way, right?
It feels like that's the point. It feels like the more I experience, the more, as we do in our life, even in our bodies, we're growing back to be childlike again. And in my work, I feel like I am learning more and more, and I'm grabbing anything I can from the human scale, even if it's I'm sourcing all sorts of spiritual literature at this time. I will look and say, what is the meaning of what I just saw? What is there any symbolism? What can I do to help give that person a story that they can web into and possibly relate to, whether it be, I know Barbara and I spoke about significance of certain organs, and I had a patient 2 days ago talking to her about the teeth, and how when we see issues with the teeth, oftentimes it's because the truth has to be spoken to the falsity.
Thanks for protecting me, Carey. You can let it out.
Well, no, it's interesting because
it's true. I was going to say that it's totally true.
It's
that the body expresses, the body is trying to tell us a story, and it's not trying to create havoc. It's trying to communicate for some kind of a somatic release. And so many of our issues are just there, and they're early, and it could be ancestral, you know, that it's bigger than us. So it doesn't matter if you believe in past lives or not, there's a lot more going on. And so anyone who works on me now, I've learned that it has to be all of it.
Right. You know, I was just going to ask, someone on this chat says that they have adrenal fatigue. They want to ask about supplements, but there's more to it than just taking supplements for adrenal fatigue. Because if you keep draining your, you know, adrenals, the supplements are probably will strain it even more. So what do you think?
Well, if I can, I would just say that what I feel in that question is I feel this spin. Okay. And sometimes when I'm working with the adrenals, there's this spin. Sometimes it's like, oh, the adrenals just appearing high. The person took a deep breath in. They had to hold their breath for life. What's the story? The person that's asking the question, there's this, and I get the chills, there's this spin going on. And when I see spin like that, that to me has clinically become a pattern of a portal. So if someone's not really living their truth, and this could be generalized probably across the board, but specifically there's this interesting spin. And oftentimes when I feel that spin, there's a song to it. I've been known to record sound because the adrenals are almost like the drum. Sometimes they can come through with these interesting patterns and sounds, because for me, it's a portal. That person most likely is completely, I don't want to say completely, that's a strong word. I can be strong sometimes.
Do you want me to give you a name? Olive and One is their handle name. So go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So it feels like there's definitely a suppression towards not necessarily living their truth. That doesn't mean they have to change their job. But when I see this, that's tribe. That's a person that's probably on this planet that has a gift that has not yet been resourced, or it's been suppressed. We look as well, like the spin, I can feel the spin. And then there's a little bit of spin going on around pituitary, but it's kind of off, like one's high and one's low. So that person is in what would be clinically recognized as a bipolar pattern. Sometimes with bipolar, we see, if someone's in our clinic and we're doing cranial osteopathic techniques, we actually see that the gland itself is in a torsion, or one side is rotated and the other forward, anterior, and the other side is rotated. And so it shows up as like, works, doesn't work, high, low, or thyroid works, then thyroid crashes, and thyroid works, and thyroid crashes. And so we have to test them every 3 months to see what is the truth going on with thyroid. But what it feels like is pituitary's off, highs and lows, and that they're not quite living in their gift. And so supplements, the supplement is to really go in and search. And if I were to give someone like that a supplement, it would be like, eat organ foods, eat the kidneys, go to the butcher, get the kidneys, get the heart, eat the glandulars, get the liver, and let that frequency nurture the glands from a unprocessed. I don't always say that because most people don't want to do that. But in these cases, the body still needs to be supported, but it would be to really look at their life.
But
Carey, they could take glandulars if they don't want to eat organ meat, right?
Yeah, they can. It's just, let's say I hear it's like 20% effective versus like
that's what I was going to
70
tell you, Barbara. But you know, you eat organ meat, or you even do a supplement or some kind of diet, but that doesn't change, or maybe you're saying it does, that attitude, that encoding of, you know, not speaking their truth, or does it affect that? Tell me what you think. If there isn't.
Well, that's where even what you're doing is, I love that original acupuncture. I mean, for me, that has been personally something I have benefited from enormously, because it goes beyond the materia, the matter. And whether it be your work or whether it be the energetic long distance healing, this is where I tell people like this often, you don't have to do so much. It's not about doing, it's getting treated in a way where you can be seen and held, and it gives the body the chance to sing the song, to show the story, maybe even to show the gift. And it may come through in images. Most of the time when images come through with my work, I tell the people what I see, and I would say 95% of the time it means something to them. But it doesn't really need to mean anything, because most of the time it's just the body needing to show it. It doesn't need, it's not so much to talk about it afterwards. In that case, I would say that person needs to work on the soul level. If she works with long distance healing, she or he works with long distance healing, or works with a modality where you're able to sort of touch the soul level. Because they may not have resources, you know, upbringing.
I think, like, you know, people have limited resources.
They do.
And the reason why I recommend you is because you're touching all levels. I mean, look, I know people, they run to 1 million doctors, then they have all the different channelers, been there, done that. And it is a lot of different energies also coming at you. The other thing I want to comment on is that we have to accept ourselves where we are and not feel we're broken in order, I think, to go forward. And I've worked with you on that level that we're kind of all okay. And we're just taking those steps. But if we view ourselves as broken, or, you know, and self-harm by judging ourselves, I think it makes it even harder. And from working with you, I have had the reflection of that despite what's going on, it's all okay, that I am this loving divine being, you know, in the inner.
Yeah, but
that that is the absolute core point of the work, Barbara. That is the core point. Most of the time, there's this big thing that starts to happen in different forms with different people. And at that point, when I'm seeing, okay, now it's my job, I get this pressure that comes, and it's like, okay, it's time to journey, and it's time to really pray for this person and come from love, from the heart, and lift them up and claim that it is done. They are perfect. Our grids are perfect. And along the way, we've had these compressions, we've had these injuries, but the intelligence inside is perfect and remains perfect. And that these ouchies and these strains and these even disease is such a message that when the person is seen, and when there's what we would call the fulcrum, the person just being the neutral point, that just lifts that person up and says, now I claim that this person can source their perfection, that they now are, I claim it for them. Source the perfection that's there. It is finished. It's over. It's done. And
I love that.
Oftentimes it is. Boom, just like that.
I mean, Alan carries on the same kind of wavelength as Chris Grissom, in that the body knows, and the body just needs some assistance with light, with expertise, and neutrality, with love.
Right, but I want to ask another question. I'm not sure why I'm asking this, because it just came to me to ask, because we're contained in these grids, these personal grids, and within the grid matrix, that we're part of the whole totality of existence. So this virus, this epidemic, this worldwide crisis is about an impacting on the personal and collective grids that we're in now. So do you see a way where you can go into the bigger realms and correct the kind of human DNA collective consciousness of that understanding? Do you know what I'm asking?
Yeah,
right?
I know. I think I know what you're asking. First thing I would say is that in terms of quarantine and what we're going through, there have been often times where I've been asked, what do you think, or can you tap into what's going on? And every time I've branched out to look, I get the biggest no. I don't know what it means, but I just get no. And now it's loosened up a little bit. But what I feel that I've experienced clinically with the long distance work is that we've all been put into a compression. And osteopathically, if someone broke a bone, it's scar tissue, percent water in vivo, bones are alive, they're fed blood, they're living tissue. We'll take a bone and we will compress, we will go into compression, and then the bone will start to sort of unwind and have a conversation with itself renegotiate this great expansion where fluid will come into the bone, and then we get this release and cluck, 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 cluck. It pops back out into its original porous grid. How is this relevant to quarantine? I even personally can relate. I feel like we've all been put into this compression, and we've had to kind of renegotiate and really confront things or not, which is where the rage comes, the rage and backlash and destruction. But I feel like we've all been put into a compression, and that's all I've been able to see. And then from there, where do we correct? Do we respond? It feels like a part of nature. I don't know if the catalyst, I don't know if what's going on. It's the most bizarre thing. It almost feels like a film. When I've looked through peripheral vision, it doesn't fit an organic grid to me. That's all I can say.
But if we've been put into a compression collectively, and what you just said, after the compression, we go and expand out, maybe this is what the future holds, a kind of an expansion. But do you think, and if you look, is our DNA actually changing, and are we becoming a new species, let's say, or a new being somehow because of this?
I mean, it can go either way. I mean, when we're stagnant and there's a bacterial or a viral component, we can have a lot of predisposed stuff, as you know, going on in the body. And if we don't work well with the compression that we're in, those strains can turn polymorphic. You know, if there's lack of oxygen, if there's compression, there's lack of oxygen, and we're not slushing around and reflecting or doing whatever we're supposed to do in compression, those strains can change their own DNA. Mm-hmm. And we are also, our DNA is affected by epigenetics, by our environment. Mm-hmm. So I feel like it's really 50-50. Like, which way are you going to come out of compression? Are we going to come out of, like, I don't know. What are we seeing going on right now is not good.
Carey.
But it's showing that there's this compression that we're either going to come out of it the butterfly, or we're going to come out of it as a violent, dark shadow.
But Carey, I have a question.
Yes.
A lot of people who already have trauma and PTSD are constricting and holding and getting further traumatized by these events. Understandable. Can you address that? Because we know that when we're holding, the whole energetics shut down, and that's why trauma affects the body. So can we talk about that a little bit, especially at this time?
Well, I just want to add to that, because people with patterns, whatever they are, if they're afraid of the world, will use the world to reinforce their patterns. And how do you free people from their patterns is sort of the bigger question there, right?
I feel like I can speak only mostly because I feel like I'm just so absorbed in the work right now, is that clinically, the people I'm working with that have PTSD, because they're in compression, it's like a lot of PTSD is running around like crazy and not stopping and looping and not listening and going 100 miles an hour. And when they're put into compression, and then we say, lay down for an hour and let's meditate and journey together and see what happens. The system is finally getting compressed and quiet, and it's where change can happen. I have seen a lot of things change for the better with these compressions with the PTSD type. I have a couple of patients that they can hold it. It's like the wish would be that they stay in it for 72 hours, which is a concept of possibly working that way. I don't have the stamina for that, but it's like, I feel like there are some PTSD subjects where they're there. And then when the space is open again, they can't hold it.
Right. So can they hold it? What do they need to do?
Well, I am a great believer of the neuroplasticity work. I do something called Brain Talk, but there's also Joe Dispenza and Lipton and Annie Hopper, and you know the point being is, if they have a tool where they can use the conscious brain to rehabilitate the subconscious brain, where we say, okay, even if it's 25 times a day, you need to pick up an essential oil and really go into it. You have to pick up a crystal and study it. It's actually a Gestalt method where you study every crevice, every line, you draw it. It's taking the 4-year-old brain and distracting it out of the spin of the stress cascade, because this looping PTSD, all that's happening is adrenal fatigue, epinephrine, norepinephrine, cortisol, adrenaline, battery acid in the body, inflammation, tissues can't heal, vessels constrict, no blood flow to site, disease. So if we can give tools where all of a sudden they get to look at the textures of a beautiful apple for 7 minutes, and they start to salivate, and they start to produce oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, anti-inflammatory cytokines to command the nervous system to calm, to rest. I have seen incredible healing when people are given that tool of how they can basically distract the 4-year-old brain, using the conscious brain to rehabilitate the subconscious brain in combination with
your
a
work.
team of therapies.
I have to say that honestly, with my doing Joe Dispenza's meditations, so yes, I work with Carey, but we have to take responsibility for creating new neural pathways, for observing the thoughts we're thinking, which are creating our reality. And it's not for the faint of heart to change these patterns, but you got to do it, because there's change when you do it. So the neural pathway conversation, Carey, is huge, especially when people are getting re-traumatized with what's going on. It's huge.
Huge. And so we do, clinically speaking, if I have someone in my practice, I might be working on the amygdala glands in the brain. One is rotated, the other one's compressed. So there's also a physical structural misalignment that's triggering trauma. And I'm holding the cranial sphere from long distance. And I have the patient go to the Bahamas, and they're floating, and they're explaining to me, and this is based on some of our work, where they are creating a virtual reality by speaking the now. I am floating in salty, warm, crystal blue water, and I can smell my suntan lotion. It's banana. And I can hear the sounds of, they really embellish in the senses, and they start to, again, they salivate. When I've worked with horses, and you work in the parasympathetic, the rest and digest side of the nervous system comes in, and the horses start going, they start licking and flapping, and they're having this release. It's the same thing where we close our eyes and we trick our brain to think the brain is listening, and there's literally a stress hormone response while we're working on the body and holding structures that might be stuck and talking them through it. And people can then do that on their own, where during the day, if they don't have me, like that person that still spins, if they will come to realize how much power they have, that outside of the session, if they can get that effect by just 4 or 5 times a day, close your eyes and speak about, the fresh mountain air in Vermont and what it smells like and the colors in the trees, the brain will believe it.
So I'm getting a sense of how you're working. I'm not sure, because I don't know you that well. Barbara knows you better.
No, you don't really get it. You want Carey maybe to work a little?
No, I wanted to say what I do get is that you look at the person in their perfection, in their ultimate perfection, and then you match it to what is, and then you see where you can work to bring that person to their perfection. Is it something like that?
It is. For example, Alan, if I were to work with you, would you be open to that?
You can work with me, yes.
Okay.
I want to be more perfect.
You want to be more perfect.
No,
so, let's see. Is there a way, just so I can see you really well, to put us in a view where we're side by side, so I can see?
Oh, side by side. Yes, me and you side by side like that.
Well, I see when I'm talking, I see just a little tiny Alan, so it's harder to read you. If I can
see, wait.
I'll just get rid of Barbara. Gallery view.
Thanks, Alan.
No, I was just kind of
throw me under the bus so you can
No, I wasn't throwing you under the bus. I was just.
No. You can
I'm
leave Barbara.
I've had 30 sessions with Carey. Don't worry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. You can put your video back on, Barbara.
No, put your video. But see in the upper right where it says gallery view, or maybe I need to click gallery.
Yeah, you can.
Here, I did it. Never mind. I have it.
Side by side.
And now
Okay.
I see you. Okay, it was mine. Okay. So for example, if I were to be working with you, I would check in with you and just simply ask you, what are your treatment goals? And that's
Well,
an open question.
Are you asking me now?
I'm asking you, what are your treatment goals?
I would like to feel really great every morning. Some mornings I feel really great. Some mornings I wake up tired. I think it has to do with being on the computer late, eating late, not going to sleep when, the two secrets I've developed to really feeling well is eat when you're hungry and sleep when you're tired. It's come down to that basic thing. But anyway, I don't always do that. So my treatment goals is to really feel fresh and clear and present all the time.
That's great. I love that goal. I love it when there's a positive goal. It's a really good intention. So when you're speaking that, this is what I start to do. I start to see highlighted areas in your body, and I don't need to see your whole body. I can feel there are 5 spheres that we work with, and I don't need to go into that: cranial, cervical, thoracic, abdominal, pelvic. But I see from the left base of the tongue is a diaphragm, one of 14 diaphragms in the body. I see at the base of the tongue going back to the left tonsil, going to the left jugular, a little bit left collarbone, a little bit of a pull that goes and sort of shows to me a little bit of an internally rotated lung. So I would ask you, this may go back to mouth, tonsil. It just feels very fascial related, where there's a little bit of a pull.
I had asthma as a child. That may have been part of that. The left side is weaker than the right side for sure.
Okay. So as you say asthma as child, what I see highlighted is the phrenic nerve, which is the nerve that's responsible basically for our breathing. If we have phrenic nerve irritation, we can see things like chronic hiccups and whatnot. It actually folds onto the breathing diaphragm as well. But it's showing me that the ganglion, so cervical vertebra number 2 is considered the phrenic hub, okay? And so I feel like there's a highlight of the cervical, which shows me that there was something that happened, and it doesn't necessarily have to come to a memory now, but it feels like there was an impact where the cervical vertebra number 2 went backwards, and it irritated the phrenic nerve hub. So it affected your ability really to regulate your breathing and create as a compensation, this internal rotation of the lung. So what I would start to do is I would start to work, and I use different things with my hands. Sometimes I keep people on the video. Other people don't like to be on video because they want to go super neutral. I'm working. Because a lot of it too is speaking it. Me speaking that to you.
Yeah, I feel it.
Power of the word. And so I start to just, because I'm connected and I'm seeing it's highlighted, it's showing me. So I just start to work the energy.
Right.
And I'm literally seeing, okay, I'm going to hold C2, the hub of the phrenic, and I'm going to work my way down the phrenic nerve until I get to a point where I'm halted. My hand is halted. I need to hold that. And then I'm doing a 50-50 stretch on the nerve. I'm actually feeling your phrenic nerve. And I hold that. I get a little bit out of the way, close my eyes. And this is where I might see something. You see a green pickup truck, the back of it, big dirt tires, don't know what that means. Sort of a forest green, country. And when I say that out loud, this left lung is going from an internal rotation. It's starting to do that thing where it will wiggle and say, hey, I may renegotiate my position. I've been seen. I see sort of what looks like a chocolate lab. Some sort of like what we'd say animale domestico, like a pet.
Mm-hmm. Could that also be relatives? Does it have to be me? Could it be ancestral?
Of course.
Okay.
And it can even not even, it's sort of like, great. If it is, meaningful or not, it doesn't even, it matter. Usually people are, oh my gosh, I remember when. It comes usually in an email after. But I'm following as I hold this stretch. Phrenic nerve is lengthening. Left lung is starting to internally rotate, externally rotate. And then there's a release. And I encourage that release with different hand movements. I'm still holding C2. You could swallow a couple times to integrate.
Yeah. I feel there's more energy in my whole left side now, down the left arm too. Because when I lift weights, I can lift a heavier weight with my right. And so I do feel
good. And it's great. It's an honor. I'm also feeling heat, flush. And I'm just going to hold both lungs as I would do if you were in my clinic. I'm going to hold both lungs so that they both feel held. This is a grief place. Did you grow up around horses?
no, but I'm very allergic to horses and to hay itself. I really can't be around horses.
It's interesting because it's the second time I mentioned horses. So there's a horse thing. And it's like, okay, great. Thank you, lungs. Thank you. What was your highest intention, your most positive intention for creating that allergy, for expressing that allergy in his body? Thank you. This no longer serves. I'm going to raise this up. I'm going to take the lungs and raise it up. This no longer serves.
Good.
And just raise you up. And I'm just like, every cell be replenished and nourished by the most unconditional, most incredible source of love. Thank you so much for that most positive intention, for trying to keep him safe from horses, but this is no longer serves. And the lungs say yes. And there's an external rotation of both lungs. And I usually will breathe it out, or what I'm going to do is spit it out. Okay, spit it out. And this is wonderful. I mean, this is a complete moment with you. I'm just going to hold the breathing diaphragm. It's one of the biggest muscles in the body, and just let it integrate. It's one of the most important things that pressurizes the upper from the lower. It only has 3 holes in it: esophagus, aorta, vena cava. So it's a huge buffer for pressure zones. And so I just hold the diaphragm again, love, gratitude, and just let the diaphragm, when you breathe in, it descends, and when you breathe out, it ascends.
It's definitely more blood.
It was a little bit higher on the left. So we go, okay, thank you. We're going to hold that. See that? And then it drops, and that's it. And that's a complete moment. I mean, that's
Carey,
wonderful.
I don't know if this works in your groups, but usually there are other people that need that clearance. So even through that exercise, I felt the energy, even though it was directed at Alan. And I know there's a lot of people on the call. You might want to tell Alan if any of you felt it, because usually we're the collective. Yeah.
We are. I mean, I felt it. You felt it. That's Alan, goes back to your point of like, how can we make a difference when you're doing your work? Even Barbara, she's doing very important work through the continuum of linking people and sharing knowledge. I mean, that in itself, in my belief, it really illuminates, it expands into the society. We have techniques where we work on holding a person and reorganizing their system around their family, around their society, around their city. It goes all the way up. It was developed by a blind osteopath named Dion, who just passed away last year. And this is the work. This is like, people are saying, what can I do about what's going on with the violence right now? Do I give money? I feel like this is just get on your knees and pray or meditate.
We have to start within. I mean, it has to come here first, because as we're seeing with this situation, there are those that have done their work and the intention is peaceful, and there are those that are getting triggered by events, and we're seeing all the different expressions of who we can be and where we need to go. And what I want to say is, so Carey does do these sessions, and now if I'm in every week, we'll share your email. If not, I won't, because everyone's using her. But
you have an email I can tell people to go to. But before I do that, I just want to say I'm feeling a lot more energy on my whole left side. It's as if my
wonderful
whole arm has expanded. There's more strength and there's more chi, I would call it.
So now you're
Wonderful.
gonna get both weights.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
great. I'm
But
very happy for you.
Carrie, are you taking appointments from people? I mean, are you?
I am. We're looking at end of June, beginning of July, and they can reach me at Osteo at Osteoinflorence.
Florence.
That's right, at gmail.com.
Okay, Gmail. Dot.
We're hoping, actually, Carrie was supposed to be out in April, but as soon as this dies down, she'll be at my place. So for those of you that are local, including Alan, you can come and have her put her magic hands on you. But again, I've learned how it's really, we can really access each other. I think that's what this whole COVID is about, that we are capable of so much more than we ever thought we were possible to do. You know, we are so much bigger than we know. And we are able to access things now because we're in this situation. And that's the benefit.
Absolutely. I mean, I was actually supposed to be back in Washington at this time, and it's like, it's just not going to happen. I can't imagine getting back. When the next time is I'm going to get back on an airplane.
Why? I mean, I know there are planes, people, so it's died down in Italy, right, Carrie? Is it?
Yes. And without going into fear space, there is discussion about second waves coming now, which is horrible to think about.
In second wave during flu season, or what's like
second wave, like a spike again in the COVID, because there's been a lot of, all the manifestazioni or the protests and these demonstrations. I mean, in Italy, everybody's, I was at the seaside last weekend, which was wonderful because now we're able to travel as of June 3rd outside of the province, but everybody's on the beach and nobody, teenagers this close, people are, it's.
But isn't it that herd immunity? Like maybe what's happening, I feel what's happening, and it's very weird, and tell me if I'm wrong. If you have a shoulder pain and then something much bigger happens, that kind of fades away. It'll be very interesting to see now if our focus is not on it as much, what's going to happen. Because
I agree with that completely.
I don't know. And I don't know if it's going to come back until flu season where it might be reignited or not. So it'll be interesting to see, but I hope it does die down so you can come soon.
We hope so too.
I do too.
For everything. But I do have another question in the chat by a woman named Marza. I would like to ask if she has something to say to me about her breast cancer.
That's a
I get it. That's, yeah. So let me just sit with that for a second. I mean, I sense a compression. I sense that. Will you ask her if it's more on the left?
Okay.
I see lower left breast, which is close to spleen. Splenic artery is what's highlighting. Can you just ask her a little bit about?
Yeah, well, I think she's hearing this, so maybe she'll listen.
Maybe she'll respond. If not, that's what I'm seeing is there's a compression.
Yeah.
And a compression to me means that there is a heaviness to it. There's definitely almost, it's not that you can grade emotional component, but it feels very linked to very much an emotional component to this. Sometimes, for example, when someone says that and they ask me something like that, I might get a taste in my mouth like toxins, or, I might have a heavy metal taste. I might have some information about bacteria, toxins. That's not the case for her. It feels like really grief. I get compressed. I get nauseous. That's a heavy emotional response for me. And then I see the lower left breast. I see major lymphatic congestion in the spine. So I'd wonder if her spine is more loss of kyphotic curve. So in our thoracic, in our upper back, we have the curve out and then it goes down and in for lumbar. It feels like she's flatter in her thoracic, which is putting a backflow in her lymph. And that's the structural component. What I would suggest, always suggestions go with approval from MD. That's the disclaimer. These are suggestions. They always have to follow up with their MD. but to really do any exercising that squeezing the breast tissue, going into compression. So if she were my patient, I would say, have you heard of the continuum movement by Emily Conrad?
I love her. I've interviewed her. She's amazing. Yes.
I worked with her before. I worked with her the last 2 years. I trained with her before she passed, and I consider her one of my greatest teachers. And I use continuum in sessions where I am, I'll use the breath and I'm unwinding for that person. So I would tell her that compression is what she would want to work with. And if she could find a continuum movement practitioner in her area and really get the fluidic body to compress and to really express itself, and that there's something having to do with spleen being compressed. It feels like she probably had a left rib injury. And that's working with that, probably the emotional story would come out. It feels like she might have a sister or twin sister that she's really carrying something for.
Or a good friend, you mean, even, or relative?
Feels like relative. So that's what I get for that.
All right. She says you're amazing.
I'm going to spit. Hold on.
Oh, is it because you are getting rid of did you feel that you had to get rid of that stuff?
Yeah, sometimes, especially if I get a little nauseous or a little bit more of a salivary response, I don't get afraid of that. I just spit it out. I'm protected. I'm very protected.
And what did she say? What did the girl say?
You get back to me about that, but someone says you're able to feel these things without seeing her because all you have to do is mention a person and you tune into the whole field, right?
Well, I do, and I will admit that the best work I do is if somebody knows I'm going to start working on them at a certain hour. That's usually what with patients as I go along, like Barbara can vouch for, is I just, at that hour, they know me, I know them, let's get to work. They lay down and I work on them. And then I will send them a voice report where I take them through my journey of all that I can remember so they can hear this.
Well, Marza says it is right breast, stage 4 breast cancer. It's metastasized in my belly. That's what
Okay. Belly. So belly is lower left quadrant. So maybe it wasn't the breast tissue. It could have been that's the upper digestive area. I just feel like that's the highlighted area. And sometimes if we see something on one side, it's because that's the side that's blocked and the other side is where it's compensating. Because on the right side, there's like a little gray, a little congestion. But for me, the culprit, if I show my chest, the culprit is really lower left breast. This is the zone. Splenic artery, spleen, rib 7. That's where I would be working. And if that's where it's metastasized, which is interesting because that means it was secondary in terms of location. That's what I see, is I'd be working on the splenic artery.
Well, you're sort of...
I would also recommend her to look into Madiri with Donnie's work with she wants to email me, Alan, give my email. It's life.
What is it?
It's life balance, LIPHE balance @gmail. If you want to email me, perhaps I could also further direct you and help you at this time.
gmail.com. I don't know if you want to go through another one from the online chat.
We'll do one more, sure.
Okay, any tips for healing type 1 DM? I guess that might be diabetes, MS. I feel like got this to prove that healing is possible for these diseases who were told me they can never, were told never could be healed. So that's fine or strong said that. So I don't know what you want to do.
Well, when we're talking about diabetes, we're looking at the pancreas, obviously. The pancreas is the deepest organ in the body. It starts as 2, embryologically, it starts as 2 organs. Then it fuses into one. Hold on, got to spit.
That's good. Keep spitting.
Actually, there's something like, I love that.
It's very shamanic. You're clearing. As you spit, you're actually helping that person clear.
Carey has a lot of shamanic.
Well, it's all shamanic, really, in a way. You're like a shamanic physician, I would call you. But anyway, go ahead.
I became an osteopath because I sat with the Native American church for 6 months. I had a time in life where I was working in my early 20s as in the fashion world in Italy. I was a buyer. I was, managing 120 factories, and it made me very sick. I got extreme, I had to do heavy metal detox. I thought thyroid crash, all sorts of things, migraines. And I had to leave that work, and I sat with the Navajos for 6 months. And so I feel like I just observed. I didn't realize how much I was a student at that time. And it launched me to become an osteopath, which I then came back to this sort of experience of a lot of times I'll hear the drum. Anyway, blah, 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 blah. So there is that.
The pancreas spleen of this guy, what do you
So the
get?
pancreas starts as two organs and then it fuses into one. And that makes it what also is why it's an exocrine and endocrine gland. So it produces digestive enzymes, but also the hormone of insulin. And the pancreas emotionally is linked to deep family worry, carrying a lot of deep family worry, a lot of deep family guilt. And so there's also type 1 is considered autoimmune. So we look at why self is fighting self. It doesn't feel like, I don't know if it's male or female, it doesn't feel like hers. It just doesn't feel like hers at all. It feels like generational. It feels really light. So if I see it, it looks like it's like a tissue paper laying on top of her gland.
Right.
And so if I were working with her, just to give a little, it's like I would just be peeling it. It also feels very compressed up against the liver. So I would ask, do you have hemorrhoids? Do you have restless leg? Because that portal system, all that drainage up through the belly, up through the liver, feels like it's weighted down by the head of the pancreas, pushing up into the liver, pushing the liver a little bit high. So I would be peeling off this tissue paper holding, letting that go. And usually if I'm by myself, I'm like clapping at it, I'm snapping at it, I'm pushing, yes, spit it out. And then I would just hold for a bit. There's a lot of shaking going on in my right hand, which means that there's an electrical charge, emotional charge. So I would get quiet. Okay, so now I do feel a toxic component of paint. I see white paint. I would ask, have you painted recently? Did you grow up with lead paint? Is there anything where you could have been exposed? Because it's really awful. It's that shaky, toxic feeling, and it's a spongy gland. So a lot of times we'll find also thymus, thyroid. Spongy glands like to hold the metals. It's also disruptive to the pathways of the liver. So she's not methylating properly, most likely, blah, 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 blah. Holding. Okay, there's a toxic component. I'd most likely have her send me a hair sample, or I would listen to something just in the meantime.
Right.
Maybe some diatomaceous earth food grade lightly. That releases the pancreas, the liver rolls forward. So I know that she could just probably start with a little bit of that. And now we have mobility in the organs, so we could just see what happens just with the breathing diaphragm and the mobility being reestablished with the organs. Is it going to function better?
Right.
So I have a question. So
No,
Carey,
this
I have a
is-
question, Alan. I have
This
a
is where the
question,
burping starts.
Alan. So Carey, let's say
I'm
someone
complete. No more running of energy. I'm starting to go, woo.
Okay.
A lot of mix. I've actually seen a lot of patients today too, so I'm pretty.
Carey,
Okay, Bob.
wait, can you hear me? So Carey, if someone has like family guilt or whatever, and let's say there's paint, but they're already carrying a predisposition emotionally, energetically, they might be much more sensitized to that than someone
Absolutely.
who doesn't have that predisposition. So that's how this gets interwoven. So
Yep.
if you don't clear the emotional and the physical, the likelihood is it could get triggered again. And so I guess my point always, and Ellen, we're both on the same page, is to show that addressing mind, body, spirit simultaneously is where the real healing begins.
Yeah.
Yes, and with that point said, probably what would be the big care for her is working with homeopathy, energetic medicine.
Right.
There's the energetic medicine that will come through. People are doing all sorts of cleanses and they're taking a million things, suitcases full of things. And it's like, no, the energy, your body's saying, I need energy medicine to clear those metals.
Right. I think that's key. Can I just ask you, were you able to help Emily Conrad a little bit? Because she was such an amazing person. It was such a shock when, because she had such a unique body of knowledge to bring that.
Amazing.
So what
I discovered her literally, the last 2 years of her life. I trained with her in Santa Fe when she came to do a seminar. And then I was doing online things with her and staying in touch with her, but by phone.
Couldn't help her?
Once, it was almost, my experience was just all of a sudden she was just offline. It was very sudden, offline, not able to be in contact, done. It was very sudden. Just like boom, all of a sudden she went over the tipping point, and that was it.
It was truly
a huge surprise.
Had a unique perception about us being all fluid, the whole thing about lymphatics and fluid, and we are water creatures and basically. Anyway, it
was the one time in my life, which is a bit of a brag, but I was never the teacher's pet. I was a teacher's pet. She loved osteopathy. She loved osteopathy, loved osteopaths. And so I felt like I got to have a little bit of the teacher's pet experience with her.
Yeah, the other thing when you talk about movement is that, especially at this time, any kind of movement, right, Carey, swimming, even for lymphatic, walking, swimming, any kind of expression is going to be really healthy at this time.
Really healthy at this time.
Connecting with nature, it's super, super important.
Yes. Also, or like me, because I'm in the heart of Florence and the gardens just opened, for me, continuum movement has been key. And also just putting on my headphones and listening to that music that really moves me, and just letting it come through in a way that touches you, that movement that really touches you, versus like, I'm going to get on the treadmill, I'm going to work. It's like, it's the non-linear movement, sound, humming, continuum sounds. It's the non-linear movement that's very helpful during this time.
Someone asked about hemorrhoids, which I get occasionally, but this person says,
so break out
anything for that,
Well, I will just say this, just because I think I'm pretty fried in terms of reading, but one thing, another interrelationship, Alan, also for you, is that we think of one eliminatory system being the digestive tract. And I mentioned this in my lecture a couple weeks ago. But we actually have two eliminatory systems. The cardiorespiratory system is an eliminatory system. This is where the CO2-rich blood is being rehydrated, reoxygenated, et cetera. So if we're stuck in our belly and there's congestion there, it might be because we're over or under pressurized in the system above. And that probably goes with the Chinese medicine point of view as well. I think it's lung, large intestine. I don't know what the connection is there.
Lung and large intestines are.
You have to look at the teeter-totter.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a teeter-totter that also we look at structurally, like the neck will face a colon that's stuck. The lungs attach to the base of the neck, or the pleura that covers the lungs, attaches to the lower portion of the cervical spine. So a lot of times it's very diagnostic that we are working here and we're looking at lung and intestine.
Right.
If she's had a baby, though, the colon can get a little stuck inside the hip.
Some guy.
It's a little. Oh, it's a guy. Okay, no.
I think, Alan.
Yes, we should.
I think it's like much later in Florence, and
I know. No, sorry. We can wrap up, but I just want to say, Carey, it's like you're a visionary in the sense where you look at the body and the visions come to you, and then you have the training to know what to do to correct that vision, that to bring that person into wholeness. And that's really.
And also the spiritual clarity to be open to the bigger, to the greater.
Right. But are you excited when you get a case that you really have to figure out? Is that kind of fun for you? Like all these different parts that you have to put together, or is it all exciting, everything,
I mean, honestly, I feel like every time I work on someone, my prayer or intention is just help me help this person. So I feel like I don't take credit, because I really feel, even with this interview, it's just flowing through. I'm a vessel. Yes, I have knowledge, and I'm really proud of all the things. I love to learn. I'm proud of what I know. I'm proud I can apply my Carey self to it. When I get these testimonials about this, that, and it's almost like I carry human. I still necessarily am trying to believe that this is all real.
Well, it is real because
I mean, it's like, wow. I mean,
opening.
this is real. And so it keeps me very humble because
That's humility.
it's like, you know, we have to really also acknowledge that that person's doing the work and that there's something much greater that shows up when there are two people and there's love and intention and knowledge, and really somebody being very alpha and claiming it over. Like, I claim healing over this person. That is my job. And when they come back to and say, you know, wow, you did it. No, it takes two, it takes the greater, and it happened, and it's happening. And I'm just blown away.
It's
Can
very in the middle.
energy now? Can we send you a little energy for all the work you've done?
Thank you.
Because I know tuning into that space of that shamanic kind of mindset is an energy, and it does take more energy than we think to access those realms, because you're pulling it through so many different levels of your psyche and body. And so you're engaging your own body, which is also maybe a little tired.
Carey, the people I know, including myself, are so grateful that we just send her tons and tons of love and a big hug. And Alan, thank you for exposing Carey's work to your
I
network.
love that kind of stuff because it's mind, body, spirit, all in one, which is what we are. And if you can't separate one part of ourselves, you can't separate, just treat the body. You know, the joke in Chinese medicine is you have a headache, you treat the head. That was a big joke. They would always laugh about that. You know, you treat the whole body, and then but so people can reach you again at what was that?
Osteoinflorence@gmail.com. And I'm so not tech savvy. I have to apologize. My internet site, I didn't have a business card. I still really, I mean, I sort of have a business. I'm just completely, I've always just been sought out through email, a little bit old school that way. But there is a website that's eventually going to come through one day.
Website.
Osteoinflorence@gmail.com.
Are you teaching what you're doing anywhere? Are you? I mean,
I am. I taught in April a group of, actually there were osteopaths and healthcare practitioners. Then I just recently taught at the end of May a wonderful group linked to Barbara, wonderful people doing all sorts of healing. I'm teaching it again for the Italian school, but it will be translated into English June 11th. So it's instead of two classes, it's 3 classes because the translation takes a little bit longer. And then we all roll into the 3-course program for distance healing. The first course is gastrointestinal, second course is cardiorespiratory, third course is urogenital, and then there's an optional advanced course for the nervous system and endocrine system in January. People can get in touch with me. There will maybe be another basic group somewhere in October, depending on whether I travel to Washington. I do teach hands-on traditional osteopathic visceral manipulation, so aligning of the organs, both in Italy and Washington, D.C. But who knows when I'll be back.
You're coming.
Stateside.
Okay, you probably teach at
eventually.
You could teach it probably at Omega Center. There's probably a lot of places you could teach your courses.
I started at Bastyr University in Washington State, and I taught my program there exclusively for the postgraduates. And coming back over to Italy, it's tougher to get all the way over there. They're interested in holding. I teach a visceral manipulation course around Lyme disease.
Wow.
And taught a bunch of the Clean Heart people over there with that.
I love Clean Heart. I know people. People.
So that's something that still links me to Bastyr. We'll see though, it's not on the schedule right now.
Carey, if someone has Lyme disease, do you feel at distance now that you could help them?
I've had some recent cases where I have pulled bugs, and I had an email that said, I haven't felt this good in 20 years.
Wow.
And I feel like there's such an interest. I studied Lyme disease for 4 years and developed a hands-on protocol to help patients. They all responded. positive, that all helped them, adjusting certain structures in the body. I definitely feel like Lyme disease is an opportunistic disease to a already compensated system with predispositions, and they do really well with this kind of work because there's trauma.
Okay, because someone had asked me who's on this call. So, Alan, we have to say buona notte.
Buonanotte, buonasera, sì.
Can we do another show? Maybe we could focus on Lyme and another
Happily.
show. Thank you so much, Carey, for
Thank
spending
you.
your time here. I know it's late in Italy. Thank you, Barbara, for your incredible connections.
Thank you, Alan, for your connections. And we wish everybody on this call that you've received some positive energy and you continue to feel good and that we're all in this together.
Yes, yes.
Amen to that.
I have some upcoming shows. You could tune into this YouTube channel, youtube.com/new realities. I actually have a healing salon tomorrow at 3 p.m. And I just work with pain, remote healing for just pain, Niles Gerard. But we will definitely have Carey back.
Thank you.
Because it's so refreshing to see someone who works on so many levels at once. So, okay, get to sleep. I guess you're tired.
Thank you. Buonasera a tutti. Thank you so much. Healing to all. We all deserve it. It's all there waiting for us.
Yes, this is Alan Steinfeld with Barbara Slane, Life Balance Center, New Realities with Carey Benenson Taussig. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Thank you.